Welcome everyone. Today I have a very special guest. I have Toby.
Hello.
She is also a YouTuber. What? Collab. She has her own channel, which I have linked in the description.
I do a bunch of content. I guess one of my most popular things is like reviewing physics exams or astrophysics exams from various universities, or just talking about what it's like to be a student, really.
So you just said that you studied in your master's and your bachelor's astrophysics.
Yeah, so I started out as an astrophysics major, but along the way I ended up graduating with a physics and math double major from my undergrad. That was in New Zealand. And then I did a 1-year honours program, which was kind of like an accelerated or condensed master's into 1 year. And then I started a PhD, yeah.
So in your undergrad, you did physics and math. So why did you decide to study physics and math? And also, why did you decide to go to New Zealand?
Yeah, well, I was in New Zealand because that's where I did high school. So I'm actually, I guess, a Kiwi. I went to the University of Canterbury, which is in Christchurch, the South Island of New Zealand. I went there because I wanted to do astronomy. I was like really interested in space and all that, and it was just the best uni there for that. But I ended up moving to Australia for my honours. I was studying physics and maths because I sort of found along the way that I started as an astrophysics major just because I liked space. And I actually found along the way that to work in like astrophysics, really what you need is a solid foundation in physics and maths. Learning the stuff that's very specific to astrophysics, like maybe the evolution of stars, like the life cycle of stars and all the different like astronomical bodies, that's actually not that useful. What's useful is actually coding as well as your fundamental math and physics to actually understand what's going on. So even though I ended up deviating quite far from astronomy as I got to honours and PhD, I was just motivated by the fact I'd seen that if I have this solid foundation of physics and maths, I think I can work in astronomy or anything else in those areas. It just seemed a lot more broad to me. Yeah, I didn't want to get too narrow on just knowing about stars and nothing else.
Yeah, of course. So I guess then you always wanted to go into space, and then so you kind of just worked backwards from there, like okay, in order to get here I need to have a fundamentals in physics and math. So the motivation was really to go into space.
That was the motivation, but I sort of stepped back and then stepped into a different direction. So by the time I got to honours and was doing a thesis there, I was working in biophysics. And I guess what really happened was I identified that my initial interest in space was really just an interest in cool physics. Cool physics also crops up in biology and in lots of other areas. So really I'm just interested in cool things like to do with physics.
So I'm curious to know how you ended up going from this path that seemed like it was like pretty set out, like you were like, I'm gonna go into space, I have to do this and this and this to get there, and then you ended up going into this biology thesis. So how did you end up doing that?
I feel like it was a little bit random. I guess I had this mindset where I became more open to other ideas. Like initially I was like very much like, I have to be an astrophysicist and everything else is unimportant and not interesting. But I was just being a little bit more open-minded by the end of my 3 years, maybe because I was like a little bit sick of maybe the passion just didn't last that long with the astrophysics. But I remember looking for supervisors to work on an honours project with, and I knew that picking a good supervisor would be important for me because the research was like such a big component of getting good grades in honours, and I really wanted good grades in honours to get into the PhD. So I knew I wanted a supervisor who would like motivate me and that would just be a good person to work with, because I'd heard like some horror stories of people that had bad supervisors who sort of neglected them and they just sort of floundered on their own for a year and then handed in something that wasn't very good. And I just felt very aware of picking my project based on the best supervisor and maybe picking it based on the research topic second. And the way that I found a supervisor was like I emailed a few people. I expressed interest in like a whole range of physics, from like biophysics to plasma physics to some astrophysics to just like, you know, like really a broad range of things. And I didn't really care what I ended up doing, but the supervisor that I ended up choosing was working on this biophysics project. Just really stood out as someone who actually cared about me, and I guess that made all the difference. I felt like she was actually interested in where the project was going, and she felt excited about it, and that excitement was contagious. And I was like, actually, this is like a really random thing I've never thought of before, like applying physics to a biological problem. And I was like, well, it just feels right to go with her. And so I couldn't have made that decision without meeting them. But once I had met them, it just felt right to pick this project. And I do actually stand by the advice that picking your project based on your supervisor can make a difference. Yeah.
I think it's really cool at least for people to know and to see that, you know, studying something like this really opened up the doors to, the lights just went off. If you study something like this, you can always pivot, because what I think people are afraid of doing is like funneling themselves into a situation that they can't apply their knowledge to other places. So it seems like studying first physics and math and getting a fundamental basis of the science. And then you can apply it to different things like biology, which is something that you said you didn't study before. So that's really crazy. And I think that's something that, you know, at least on my channel, people come, they want to study aerospace. And to study aerospace, you don't have to go into aerospace engineering. You can go into electrical engineering, you can go into chemical engineering, you can go into mechanical and mechatronics. It really depends on what you want to focus on. And then for me, I did a lot of turbulence and combustion, and I can apply turbulence flows to, you know, environmental engineering or something like that. So I think that's something that's really beneficial for people to know.
Yeah, what you're saying reminds me of like some people message me saying things like, oh, I'm like 12 or like 14 years old. Like they're quite young and they're like, I want to be an astrophysicist, and you've definitely solidified this path I want to go down. And they ask me for very specific advice on what courses to take over the next 5 to 10 years to reach this destination that they've decided on. And it's sort of sweet to see those messages, and I appreciate it. And it's like, I would give my advice and try to help them as best I can. But I also think, like, I don't want you to be so set on your belief. I don't want you to be so, like, having it planned out so meticulously in advance. Like, sometimes that can be helpful, but often that can just lead you to disappointment if you
don't like it.
Yeah, if you don't like it, if you like do all the stuff preparing to be the greatest astrophysicist, and then you actually like take your first few courses and you like don't do very well and you actually don't like it.
Or what if you get there? What if you become an astrophysicist and then it's like, you did it, and now what?
I feel like you should pivot at every opportunity you can, just based on what you're interested in.
I think that's really good advice. What would be your best advice to someone that thinks they want to study astrophysics?
Well, for that in particular, if you sent me an email asking that, I would send back to you something like, study physics, maths, and computer science. Those are like some 3 core things I think are really important to go and research in an area like that. But also, like, do astrophysics, like join an astronomy club. Don't just watch documentaries, like actually try to get a sense of what the research is like. You can even like watch lectures on YouTube, and that will give you a bit more of an idea. But yeah, just don't be afraid to pick something else that's related.
Course.
Just study those basic skills and know in the back of your mind, like, oh, this could make me a great astrophysicist. But those same 3 things, computer science, maths, and physics, can also make you a great engineer, probably, or a great, like, I don't know, biologist if you're working in, like, biophysics. Like, you can do anything with, I think, those core skills. So just know that you're working towards something good using those, but you don't necessarily know what it is.
Yeah, of course. And a last question, if someone did want to go into astrophysics, what other paths could they take?
I actually would recommend a path completely different to mine if you want to go to astrophysics these days, and that would be to actually like major in computer science or something like really technical, because in the end of the day, astrophysics, like many other sciences, is just dealing with huge data sets and being able to find patterns in this data and do something useful with it. Like even images that telescopes they take them on cameras, and then you need to like process those images in some way that's, you're not just looking at it and you're like, oh, that's a galaxy or that's a thing. Like maybe that's how astronomy was years and years ago, but now it's like putting it into something like MATLAB, coding up some data pipeline to actually find the galaxies or find the images you're looking for.
Well, thank you so much. We actually just filmed another video that's on your channel, and your channel is called Tibees.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, yeah, so if you guys want to see our part 2, you can click the link in the description.
All right, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.